Hello, heroes, and welcome to another episode of Campus Needs You. As some of you may know, it is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So in the spirit of sexual assault awareness, Ferris is doing a Step Up Speak Out session. The posters around campus look like this. It just tells you that on April 27th, you can go to the Founders Room in the UC. There are going to be like workshops like how to help out a friend who's been sexually assaulted, and there will be survivors speaking out. So in order to get the ball rolling, I thought I would share my story. Whew. I've not been looking forward to making this video. It's something I'm simultaneously like excited and nervous about, because I'm excited to like be honest and open with you guys, but sharing my story is always kind of difficult. Well, okay, I'll just start at the beginning. Whew. My first experience with sexual assault was when I was 5 years old. I was repeatedly molested by one of my older brother's friends. He was 13 at the time, and it went on for... You know what, I was gonna do this whole video where I told you guys like in detail my story, but I cannot do that. Because it's one, gonna be a really long video, and two, I just can't explain the inner turmoil that happens and like the blank whiteout static fear that happens when you are traumatized and then re-traumatized. So instead what I'm gonna do is give you an overview and then tell you what happened afterward, because I think that's the most important part anyway. So my first experience with sexual assault was when I was 5. There was a 13-year-old boy who molested me for months on end, and when you are 5 years old, that feels like an eternity. So what it did was it created this environment in me where I didn't feel like my body belonged to me, and I didn't feel like I could tell people no, and I didn't feel like I was protected by anybody. So I didn't tell my family. I don't know why, because they're the most understanding, beautiful people in the world, but I didn't, because I was 5 and I didn't know that it was wrong. Then when I was 13, I was re-victimized by an 18-year-old. I said yes when I was 13, but because I was from that like trauma place, and because I didn't understand the emotional repercussions, and because I had very poor boundary settings, and he was 18 and had a lot of power over me, especially in like the group of friends that we were like a part of, that was not okay, and that was not consent. The third event happened a year after that when I was 14, because I was just to the point where I could just slip out of my body when it happened anyway. I didn't have to be there, I didn't have to be present for it, so they could do whatever they wanted with my shell, because they couldn't actually touch me. I had a girl who groomed me and then used me as a proxy to sleep with and watch this 18-year-old boy like use me, basically. And then when I was 19, I went to Philadelphia on a train. I had no way to get home, and I was staying with this guy who basically implied very subtly that if I did not sleep with him and his roommate, I would not be able to go home. So I did, and his roommate had no idea, and his roommate was the one who realized that I was uncomfortable. This guy, who was supposed to be my friend, completely just unaware of me freezing up and blanking out and just like my face going completely vacant, and that was it. So I have been in quite a few victimization situations. And that's actually really common. That's something that happens a lot, especially if the abuse happens really young. Your chances of being raped again after the first time that you are raped go up so high. I think it's something like 50%. It's crazy high. Don't quote me on that. I'm rambling. I did not script this video. I script all of my other videos, but I just wanted to like really strip this down and make it very honest and like very raw, I guess. So let me tell you about how I coped with all of this, because I think that's the interesting part, and that's the part why it's still really hard to talk about this. I have absolutely no shame about having been victimized, because I've come to terms with the fact that it was not my fault, and that when you're 5 years old, You do not know. You have no idea. You cannot consent. And when you're 13 and he's 18 and he has a lot of social power over you, you can't consent. And when you're 14 and he's 19 and she's 18, you cannot consent. And when you're 19 and this fucking asshole won't let you go home, that's not consent. That's being coerced. So I have no qualms with the fact that none of those assaults were my fault. What I do have a problem with is how I chose to cope. I chose to internalize everything. When I was 5, I was so convinced that I liked the attention from that older boy, because every movie I've ever watched has told me that older boys paying attention to you is a compliment, and if one of them is willing to do that stuff with you, it must mean that you're really special. And then the first time that I told anybody and they took it seriously, I think I was 16, and I went to Michigan State for Girls State, and I told one of my friends and she cried with me. So how I chose to cope with all of these things, I internalized everything. I made it all my personal problems. I thought that my body was the only thing that mattered, and if I could just be pretty, then I would have the power over other people, which is, by the way, completely untrue. And so I started starving myself. I started starving myself when I was 12 years old, and I stopped when I was in my 20s. So 8+ years of that. I was angry. I was so angry at everybody, and I did a lot of really terrible things to my family and to my friends, and I became, I used myself in a lot of ways because I thought if other people were gonna use me, I might as well be the one getting the reward, right? And I dated a lot of really toxic people. I actually dated the guy who raped me when I was 14. I dated the guy who raped me when I was 14 for like a year. That's the longest relationship I have ever had, was with the guy who raped me, because I was so convinced that because we had had sex that he was the one. He was who I was supposed to be with. I was really, really terribly misled. And that made me question for years, you know, what he had done, because I dated him. So how could he have hurt me? I developed extreme anxiety to the point where some days I just could not walk out of my house, because I would shake. I would shake and I would have trouble breathing, and my heart would just be like pounding out of my chest, like cold sweats, panic, just terrified of everything. There are still days when I cannot get out of bed, when I'll just like cry for hours because I can't help it. Oh my God, wow. Whew. And it's really, really difficult to deal with, because the only thing I've ever wanted has been to be a fully functional human being. And I'm so terrified that I will never get there, because some days I feel like all of those people took the best parts of me. They stole my innocence. They stole my ability to trust people. They took my motivation and my comfort and my safety. And in a way, that's true. Like, they did take that from me, because for years I didn't feel any of that. I never felt safe. I never felt comfortable. I never felt like a real person. I used to say that all the time. I'm not a real person. They took that from me. But the really cool thing about being a survivor is that you're a survivor, and you get to claw your way out of all that shit they put on you, and all that nasty, toxic mess that they tried to make of your insides. You can tear all of that out and fill it with these beautiful friendships and these gorgeous people and your own desires and your own adventures and your own goals and dreams and wants, and that's what's really you. They don't get to take that. They don't get to take your ability to rebuild. They can destroy you and destroy you and destroy you, but the one thing that they can never, ever, ever take from you, no matter how much they hurt you, is your ability to get back on your feet and rebuild who you are. And that's what being a survivor means. It's finding your humanity again in all of that.